We'll tip our hat off to Randy Newman.
Why Randy
Short
Newman?
People? His song Short People?
You are way more familiar with
I
Randy
have no
Newman than
idea.
I am. I only know Randy Newman because he did the Toy Story song.
Okay.
That's literally my only knowledge
Okay.
of him is
People
through
people are
Pixar.
my generation would know it. The
You see, the
Short
only
People song that he did was
you
very
see,
popular.
yeah, yes. You see, the only reason Randy Newman is on his mind at all is because before we were talking about Rocket Man, which is not a slog, but it is a terribly mediocre movie, and I came away from it with the bristling hot take that Elton John really isn't that great. Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting is his only good song, and well, his only great song, and he's basically just a British Randy Newman, and everyone's a little too excited over him.
Right.
But anyway, this is not a episode about Rocket Man. Although that does sound like it could have been a B movie, doesn't it?
It sure does.
I would love that's what I would have liked more than Rocket
The First
Man.
Man in the Moon?
Yeah,
right?
rather than a biopic about Elton John, why isn't it a jukebox musical of all Elton John songs, but like about a cosmonaut or something? And so there is this scene where he goes out walking one night and he passes by a carnival barker in a freak who's parading a freak show. And of course, freak shows being what they were when they were at the height of their popularity, obviously we wouldn't call a dwarf or a little person a freak. Midget is obviously a term that's become very...
Well,
I think it should be more unacceptable, but it's achieved a level of being fairly unacceptable to refer to somebody as a midget. But definitely him passing the freak show and seeing this little person beside a bearded lady or the fattest man on earth, whatever it is just like that just like breaks him, and he just goes running away, and he goes to a diner. And it's really weird because we don't really see him interacting with people or people interacting with him that aren't his close family or the doctors that are trying to help him. So we really don't get a handle.
Well, he hasn't time to socialize.
Well,
I mean, that's. I mean, you have to limit the scope of things. When he goes out in the wild, most people don't interact with the dwarf. Or
yeah.
I mean, when we went to what's the place in New York when we went into the washroom. There are dwarfs. There's a dwarf. Are they called? Yeah, dwarf. There's a dwarf in the men's room, and there was a dwarf in the ladies' room or the women's room. They would hand out towels to you. So talk about disconcerting, and you walk into the.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
I mean,
but it's not funny. But
no, it's like there.
But you're not.
No, we should be clear about this. Is that it's all. I think a lot of times we do talk about the obvious sexism or misogyny in these movies, the racism.
Right.
But there's obviously entirely different axioms of bigotry and discrimination that these movies always reflect, and that movies in general continue to reflect. I don't think little people or people with disabilities are meaningfully represented outside of a few typecast scenarios.
Sure.
And it's a problem. It's a problem that's persistent, and I don't want to flatten that, but I do want to emphasize that this movie, I think it's more than just he feels alienated and discriminated against because he's discriminated against. I think the fact that it is a character who started out tall but is shrinking, he has a reason to feel alienated. But it seems like his alienation doesn't because we don't really get any evidence for it, that his alienation comes from discrimination. It seems to be rooted entirely in the fact that he has become that kind of person, the person who is ignored.
Scott, people know, they realize they're not laughing at you.
They're not?
No.
Why not? It's funny, isn't it? But it is. See how funny I am? The child that looks like a man. Go on, laugh, Louise. Be like everyone else. It's all right. But why can't you look at me? Look at me!
It's all on him. I mean, if you were, as his counterpart says in the carnival show, the woman that he meets.
Yeah, he meets a movie called Clarice, who's played by the actress April Kent, who I referred to her previously is a tall person actor. She's not a little person. And
right, but just make the set look.
Yeah, and it turns out that she's the one who works in the carnival show, I think.
However, the guy that comes in, the guy with the cigar, if you noticed, he was the same guy that played the fascist in Saboteur when they do the carnival thing.
Who's the? I don't get
the guy with the dark black hair that says, "Hey Clarice, make sure you come home. Make sure you get in soon because we're ready for the next show."
Don't be late, Clarice.
I won't.
Hi.
Hi.
He's actually he's actually a dwarf. He's actually a dwarf, right? He's actually in Hitchcock's Saboteur on the train ride that they take, where they have they're with a carnival, right? They're traveling with a carnival to hide from the authorities, if you remember.
So there is that bit of a representation, although it is it's more of a bit part.
Obviously, the problem with this is that when dwarfs are disproportionate in their body habitus, as you probably know.
Yeah, she does not look like she's a little. That's the only. That's the
He's
only thing.
He's shrinking. That's okay to shrink proportionately.
Right. She does. It's one of those things where all the trick photography, where it is well done, it can't alleviate the sense that is clearly just a tall actress who is being shot on a big set. And
exactly.
It's actually pretty much the only one of the few places in the movie I feel where I felt that sense of disengagement from the spectacle, where I was like,
right, because he could have a philosophical discussion. How do you deal with it? He asks her. Deal with what? This is the world.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So she encounters him at the diner, and she already knows him because by this point his condition has basically become national headlines. And so she knows who he is, and so he asks her about how do you live as a little person. Her perspective is, well, I've been this way all my life, so I don't see anything wrong with it.
Right.
Which I suppose is, okay, at least there's that. At least there's this outside character who's like, you realize that freak is just my job. Like, I actually work. It's like, it's not, yeah, sometimes, things can be rough, but it's not the end of the world if you're a little person.
Right.
How do you live with it, Miss Bruce? What do you do?
I was born a midget. It's the way I grew up. I know it's happened to you, and, well, that's different.
I don't have the same existential dread you do. You have this existential dread because you're not she doesn't say all this, but I think it clarifies the sense of perspective from his point of view, which is that he's not a little person. He is a taller person who just happens to be shrinking, and he's bringing with him all of these internalized prejudices about what it means to be normal or what it means to be a real person.
Well,
as
opposed to people looking at him.
Right.
You know,
right.
Or ignoring him completely. Or,
Exactly.
Yeah.